The lights inside Taijin Station flickered again. Commander Minho looked up from his desk and felt his stomach tighten. That was the third time in the last hour. Something was very wrong. He walked quickly to the control room. The station orbited a frozen moon far from any major space routes. 300 people lived here, mining rare minerals from the ice below. Most of them were scientists and workers who had never seen combat. They were peaceful people doing honest work in a quiet corner of space. The control room was filled with worried faces. Young Officer Deho sat at the communications panel, his hands moving quickly across the controls. The main screen showed something that made Minho's blood run cold. 20 ships had appeared on their sensors. They were not friendly. "Commander, they're Vrakul raiders," Deho said quietly. His voice shook just a little. "They're moving into attack formation." Minho had heard stories about the Vrakul. Everyone in this part of space had. They were raiders who traveled from system to system, taking what they wanted. They attacked small colonies and mining stations. They never left survivors. Some said it was because dead people could not identify them. Others said the Vrakul simply enjoyed killing. "Raise the shields," Minho ordered. "Get everyone to the central habitat now." Alarms began to sound throughout the station. People ran through the corridors heading for the safest part of the station. Parents carried small children. Scientists grabbed what research they could. Everyone knew this was not a drill. The first attack hit the station's outer ring. The whole structure shook. Minho grabbed his desk to stay standing. On the screen, he watched the Vrakul ships fire their weapons. Bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. Each hit made the station shake more. "Shields are at 60%, someone called out. 50%. "They're dropping fast." Minho turned to Deho. "Send out a distress signal. All frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that we're under attack." "Sir, the nearest help is 3 weeks away," Deho said. "Even if someone hears us right now, they won't get here in time." "Send it anyway," Minho said firmly. "Someone needs to know what happened here." Deho nodded and began working. His fingers flew across the panel as he crafted the message. It was simple and direct. "Taijin Station under attack by Vrakul raiders. 300 civilians. Shields failing. Please help." The message went out in all directions, traveling at the speed of light through the empty void. It was a tiny signal in an enormous universe. The chances of anyone hearing it in time were almost zero, but it was all they had. Another massive hit rocked the station. This time, Minho heard the groan of metal bending. Somewhere in the outer sections, hull plating was giving way. "Shields at 20%, the officer at the defense console reported. "We can't take much more of this." Minho looked at the screen showing the station's population. Most people had made it to the central habitat. It was the strongest part of the station, built to withstand emergencies. Heavy doors sealed it off from the rest of the structure. Inside there was air, water, and food for several days. But several days would not be enough. "Everyone inside the habitat," Minho ordered. "Seal the doors." The control room staff looked at him. They all knew what this meant. Once those doors closed, they would be trapped inside. There would be no way out except surrender or death. "Move," Minho said more loudly. "That's an order." They ran. Minho was the last one to enter the central habitat. He looked back at the empty control room one final time. Then he stepped through and the heavy doors began to close behind him. The sound of them sealing was like a tomb being shut. Inside the habitat, 300 people waited. Some sat quietly. Others cried. Parents held their children close. Everyone knew what was coming. The attacks continued. They could hear them through the walls. Boom, boom, boom. Each impact shook the floor beneath their feet. The lights flickered with each hit. Dust fell from the ceiling. Minho found a portable monitor and activated it. He could still see the external sensors. The Vrakul ships were moving closer. They had stopped firing their big weapons. Now they were preparing to board the station. He watched as small pods launched from the raider ships. They attached to the station's outer hull like parasites. He could imagine what was happening out there. The Vrakul were cutting through the hull, entering the empty corridors, moving closer to the habitat. "How long can the habitat doors hold?" someone asked. Engineer Soman checked her readings. "Against cutting tools? Maybe a day. 2 if we're lucky. 2 days. Minho thought about the distress signal traveling through space. Even if someone had heard it immediately, even if they had left the moment they received it, they could not arrive in 2 days. The math was simple and cruel. He looked around at the faces of his people. There were so many young ones. Children who would never grow up. Scientists who would never finish their research. Workers who had come out here dreaming of a better life for their families. "I'm sorry," Minho said quietly to no one in particular. "I'm so sorry." But even as despair settled over the habitat, Minho's distress signal continued its journey through the darkness. It traveled past empty planets and dead stars. It moved through the silence of space, carrying its desperate plea. And somewhere, farther than Minho dared to hope, something heard it. The UESS Indomitable had been cruising through a nearby sector when the message arrived. It was humanity's newest warship, the most powerful vessel ever built by Earth. Captain Hyejin was running tests on the ship's systems when Communications Officer Daeho picked up the signal. But Minho knew nothing of this. He sat in the habitat with his people, listening to the sounds of the Vrokul cutting through his station. He had done everything he could. He had sent the message. Now all they could do was wait. The cutting sounds grew louder. The Vrokul were getting closer. Some people began to pray. Others just held each other. Minho stood and addressed his people one last time. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said. "We are human. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We stand together until the end." The people nodded. Some stood straighter. If this was their end, they would face it with dignity. Outside in the darkness of space, the Vrokul continued their work. Inside the habitat, Minho and his people waited. And far away, moving faster than seemed possible, the Indomitable was coming. But Minho did not know this yet. For now there was only fear and hope and the terrible sound of metal being cut. Captain Hyejin stood on the bridge of the UESS Indomitable and studied the star charts. Her ship was 3 weeks into its first major voyage. Everything had gone smoothly so far. The new engines worked perfectly. The weapons systems performed better than expected. The crew was sharp and professional. She was proud of her ship and her people. The Indomitable was Earth's answer to the dangers of deep space. For too long, human colonies had been scattered and vulnerable. Now Earth was building ships that could protect them. Big ships. Fast ships. Ships with teeth. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Daeho from the communication station. He was young but talented with sharp ears and sharper instincts. "What kind of strange?" Hyejin asked. "A distress signal. It's faint, but it's definitely human. They're under attack." Hyejin walked over to his station. "Where?" Daeho pulled up a map.
Tajin Station.
"It's a mining colony about 4 light years from here. The signal says they're being hit by Vrokul raiders. 300 civilians." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Vrokul. Pirates, murderers. They preyed on the weak and helpless. And they were 4 light years away. "How long would it take us to get there?" Hyejin asked. The navigation officer did quick calculations. "Using standard jump drive? 2 weeks minimum." "They'll be dead in 2 days," Daeho said quietly. Hyejin looked at the distress signal data. 300 people. Families, workers, scientists. People who had left Earth to build a better future. People who were about to die because no one could reach them in time. "What about the experimental drive?" she asked. Engineer Soman looked up from her station. "Captain, that system isn't ready for full deployment. We've only tested it at 20% power. If we push it to maximum, there's no telling what might happen." "But could it get us there?" Hyejin pressed. Soman hesitated. "Maybe, if the engines don't explode. If the jump calculations are perfect. If we're very, very lucky." "How long?" Hyejin asked. 6 hours, Soman said. "Maybe 7. But Captain, I have to advise against this. We could lose the ship. We could kill everyone on board." Hyejin looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her decision. This was not what they had signed up for. This was supposed to be a simple test cruise. Safe. Routine. Now she was asking them to risk everything for people they had never met. "Those are our people out there," Hyejin said. "Humans, they called for help. They're counting on someone to answer." "Captain, command will understand if we can't reach them in time," the first officer said gently. "No one expects us to risk the ship." "I expect us to," Hyejin said firmly. "We have the power to save them. We have a duty to try. If we turn away now, we're telling every human colony in space that they're on their own. That when they call for help, no one will come. I won't send that message. Not ever." She turned to Soman. "Can you keep the engines from exploding?" I can try, Soman said. Then that's good enough for me. Set course for Tajin Station. Maximum speed. We're going to get there in time or we're going to die trying. The crew moved into action. There was no more debate, no more hesitation. Their captain had made her choice, and they would follow her into hell if that's what it took. Soman ran to the engine room. She had 6 hours to perform a miracle. The experimental jump drive had never been pushed past 20%. Now she needed to run it at 100% for an extended jump. The engines could handle it. Probably. Maybe. She gathered her team and explained the situation. We need to redirect all available power to the jump drive. Life support to minimum. Weapons offline until we arrive. Everything goes to the engines. Her assistant looked worried. Soman, if we blow the containment fields at full power, the explosion will destroy half the ship. Then we don't blow the containment fields, Soman said with more confidence than she felt. Get me every scanner we have on those engines. If something starts to go wrong, I want to know about it instantly. On the bridge, Heejin watched the preparations. The ship was humming with energy. She could feel it through the deck plates. The Indomitable was preparing to do something no human ship had ever done before. Jump calculations complete, the navigation officer reported. Course locked in. Engineering reports ready? Salman's voice came through the comm. Captain, I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be rough. Tell everyone to strap in tight. Heijin activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from Tajin Station. 300 humans are under attack by Vrkul raiders. We are going to save them. We will be executing an experimental jump in 2 minutes. It may get bumpy. Stay at your stations and do your jobs. That is all. She sat in her command chair and strapped herself in. Around her, the bridge crew did the same. No one spoke. They all knew the risks. Jump drive charging, Soman reported. 30 seconds. Yijin watched the countdown on her screen. 20 seconds. 10 seconds, 5. Jump, she said calmly. The Indomitable lurched forward into hyperspace. Reality twisted around them. The ship groaned and shook. Heejin gripped her armrests as the vessel bucked like a wild animal. In the engine room, Soman watched her displays with wide eyes. The numbers were climbing fast, too fast. Come on, hold together, she whispered. Just hold together. Alarms began to sound. Heat warnings, pressure warnings. The engines were screaming at the edge of their tolerance. Soman's hands flew across the controls, making tiny adjustments, balancing the power flow, keeping everything from flying apart. Engine temperature critical, someone shouted. Reroute coolant from secondary systems, Soman ordered. Give me everything you've got. On the bridge, Hyejin watched the timer. 6 hours in hyperspace compressed into what felt like an eternity. The ship shook and groaned. Lights flickered, but it held together. Approaching target coordinates, navigation reported. Preparing to drop out of hyperspace. All hands prepare for exit, Hyejin announced. Weapons, I want you online the second we're back in normal space. This is going to be a hot insertion. The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of light that lit up the darkness. Sensors immediately picked up Tajin Station and the Vrkul ship surrounding it like wolves circling prey. Contact, Deho reported. 20 Vrkul raiders. They're attacking the station. Hull breaches detected. They're boarding. Weapons online, G1 called from the weapons station. Targeting solutions locked. Hyejin looked at the screen. 20 enemy ships. Her crew was exhausted from the jump. The engines were overheated. By all logical calculations, they should withdraw and call for backup. But 300 humans were dying on that station. Open a channel to the Vrkul fleet, she ordered. Channel open, Deho confirmed. Hyejin spoke slowly and clearly in universal trade language. Vrkul vessels, this is Captain Heejin of the United Earth ship Indomitable. You have exactly 1 minute to break off your attack and leave this system. If you are still here in 60 seconds, I will destroy every single one of your ships. This is your only warning. She closed the channel and smiled coldly. Let's see if they're smart enough to run. War Chief Garak sat in his command chair aboard his flagship and laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge of his ship. His crew looked at him confused but not daring to question. A human ship, he said, still chuckling. 1 single human ship threatens us. Threats us! 20 warships against 1. His intelligence officer stepped forward nervously. War Chief, our information on humans says they are primarily merchants and traders. But this ship is large. Very large. And the energy readings are unusual. Garrex waved a clawed hand dismissively. Large does not mean dangerous. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. They talk much but fight little. This captain is bluffing. He opened a channel to the human ship. Human captain, this is War Chief Garrex of the Vrakul Empire. You have no authority here. Leave now or we will add your ship to our prizes. You have 1 minute to run away. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Hyejin listened to the translation. She looked at the timer counting down. 30 seconds left of her original warning. They're not leaving, Deho said. No, Hyejin agreed. They're not. She stood and walked to the weapons station where Jiwon sat ready. Target their command ships first. The big ones in the center formation. I want them gone in the first volley. Targets locked, Jiwon confirmed. Her fingers rested on the firing controls. Ready on your order. The timer reached 0. Fire, Hyejin said quietly. The Indomitable's main guns spoke with a voice like thunder. Beams of pure energy lanced through space, moving at nearly the speed of light. They struck 3 Vrakul ships in less than a second. The first ship simply disappeared. One moment it was there. The next it was expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. The second ship lasted slightly longer, its shields flaring bright before they failed and the hull melted like wax. The third tried to turn away, but the beam caught it along the side, cutting it in half. Garrick stopped laughing. He stared at his screens in disbelief. 3 ships gone, just like that. In the space of a single breath, he had lost 3 vessels and nearly 100 warriors. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. All ships attack pattern Delta. Destroy that human ship. The remaining Vrakul ships broke formation and accelerated toward the Indomitable. They fired everything they had. Missiles streaked through the void. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. It was a storm of destruction aimed at one target. Incoming fire, Deho reported calmly. Multiple weapon signatures. Point defense systems active, Hyejin ordered. Jiwon, keep firing. Don't give them a moment to breathe. The Indomitable's automated defense systems came alive. Hundreds of small guns tracked the incoming missiles and shot them down. The few that got through hit the ship's shields and dissipated harmlessly. The energy weapons splashed against the same shields like water against rock. Meanwhile, Jiwon continued firing the main guns. She worked methodically, targeting one ship at a time. Each shot was precise. Each shot was deadly. Another Vrakul raider exploded, then another. Shields holding at 92%, someone reported. Minimal damage. Garrex could not believe what he was seeing. His ships were dying. The human vessel shrugged off attacks that should have crippled it. And those weapons. Those terrible weapons that turned his warships into vapor. We need to board them, he decided. Launch assault pods. Get warriors onto that ship. We'll tear them apart from the inside. But before his ships could launch their boarding pods, Hyejin made her next move. Launch Marines, she ordered. Sergeant Taehyun, you are cleared for offensive boarding operations. Deep in the Indomitable's launch bays, Sergeant Taehyun and his Marines had been waiting for this moment. They were humanity's best warriors, trained for combat in the most hostile environments imaginable. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. They carried weapons designed to punch through ship hulls. You heard the captain, Taehyun said to his squad. We're going hunting. Remember your training. Stay together. Watch your corners. And show these aliens what happens when they threaten humans. The Marines loaded into assault pods. These were small, fast craft designed for one purpose, getting soldiers onto enemy ships. The pods launched from the Indomitable like bullets from a gun. Garrex watched in confusion as bright trails streaked from the human ship toward his fleet. What are those? Unknown objects, his sensor officer replied. They're too small to be missiles. Too fast to be. The first pod hit a Vrakul ship and punched straight through the hull. Inside, Taehyun and his squad emerged from their pod with weapons ready. They found themselves in a cargo bay filled with surprised Vrakul warriors. Contact, Taehyun shouted and opened fire. The Vrakul were fierce fighters. They had claws and fangs and centuries of raiding experience. But they had never faced human Marines in powered armor. The humans moved with terrifying speed and precision. Their weapons tore through Vrakul body armor like paper. Taehyun's squad swept through the ship like a storm. They cleared compartment after compartment. The Vrakul tried to stop them. They set up barricades and ambushes, but nothing worked. The humans kept coming, unstoppable and relentless. On another ship, a different Marine squad reached the engine room. They placed explosive charges on the reactor containment and retreated to their pod. The ship exploded from the inside, tearing itself apart. Garrix finally understood the truth. Humans were not weak merchants. They were warriors. Dangerous, skilled, ruthless warriors, and he had made the fatal mistake of underestimating them. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships, retreat immediately." But it was too late for many of his ships. More than half his fleet was already destroyed or crippled. Marines swarmed over the surviving vessels like ants. The few ships that managed to break away and jump to hyperspace were the lucky ones. Garrix's own ship was not among them. An assault pod breached his bridge just as he reached for the jump controls. Taehyun himself stepped through the hole in the wall. His armor scorched and dented but still functional. "Don't move," Taehyun ordered, his weapon aimed at Garrix's head. The Vrakul warchief slowly raised his hands. Around him, his bridge crew did the same. They were defeated and they knew it. "How?" Garrix asked in broken universal language. "How did you get here so fast?" "Our intelligence said the nearest human military was weeks away." Taehyun kept his weapon steady. "Your intelligence was wrong. When humans call for help, we answer. Always, no matter how far. No matter how dangerous." He activated his comm. "Captain, this is Sergeant Taehyun. Enemy flagship is secure. Warchief is captured. Awaiting orders." Yejin's voice came back clear and strong. "Well done, Sergeant. Hold position. We'll send security teams to take custody of the prisoners." Taehyun allowed himself a small smile behind his helmet. "Understood, Captain." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Yejin looked at the tactical display. The battle was over. 20 Vrakul ships had attacked Taejin Station. Now only 5 remained, and those were fleeing as fast as they could. The rest were destroyed or captured. "Status of Taejin Station?" she asked. "Station is intact," Daeho reported. "Heavy damage to outer sections. Central habitat is secure. I'm picking up life signs." "Lots of them." "Captain, they're alive. All of them." Yejin felt relief wash over her. They had made it. Against all odds, pushing their ship beyond its limits, they had arrived in time. 300 people would go home to their families because her crew had refused to give up. "Open a channel to the station," she ordered. "Channel open." "Taejin Station. This is Captain Hyejin of the UESS Indomitable. The threat has been neutralized. You are safe now. We heard your call and we came. That's what humans do." Commander Minho heard the message through the habitat's speakers and could not believe his ears. He looked around at the other survivors. They stared back at him with the same shock and wonder on their faces. "They came," someone whispered. They actually came. The heavy doors of the habitat began to open. Light spilled in from the corridor beyond. Minho stepped forward carefully, hardly daring to hope. The sounds of cutting and fighting had stopped. Everything was quiet except for the hum of the station's life support systems. A figure appeared in the doorway. It was a human in military armor, carrying a large weapon. The armor was scratched and burned, but the soldier stood tall and confident. "Commander Minho?" the soldier asked. "Yes," Minho managed to say. "I'm Minho." The soldier removed their helmet. It was Sergeant Taehyun, though Minho did not know his name yet. The sergeant smiled. "Sir, I'm here to inform you that your station is secure. All hostile forces have been eliminated or captured. You and your people are safe." Behind Minho, people began to cry. Not from fear this time, but from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming emotion of being snatched back from certain death. "How many?" Minho asked. "How many did we lose?" Taehyun checked a device on his wrist. "Preliminary reports show minor injuries only. No fatalities among station personnel. You called for help just in time, Commander. No fatalities. 300 people had survived. All of them." Minho felt his knees go weak. He had to lean against the wall to stay standing. "How?" he asked. "The nearest fleet was weeks away. How did you get here so fast?" "The Indomitable was closer than you thought," Taehyun said. "And our captain doesn't leave people behind, ever." More Marines entered the habitat. They moved efficiently through the crowd, checking people for injuries. One of them approached Minho. "Sir, I'm Medical Officer Yuna. I need to examine your people. Is anyone seriously hurt?" Minho pointed to a corner where several people sat. "Those few have cuts and bruises from when the station shook. Nothing serious, I think, but please check everyone." Yuna nodded and moved to work. She was calm and professional, treating each person with care. The survivors watched her work with grateful eyes. These strangers had come from nowhere to save them. It seemed like a miracle. Taehyun touched his helmet comm. "Sergeant Taehyun to Captain Hyejin. Station personnel are secure and accounted for. Medical is assessing minor injuries, beginning sweep for remaining hostiles. Understood, Sergeant, Yejin's voice replied. Good work. Complete your sweep and report back. Taehyun turned to his squad. You heard the captain. Let's make sure the station is clean. Teams of 2. Check every corridor, every room. If you find any Vrkul alive, take them prisoner. No unnecessary force, but protect yourselves. The Marines split up and began their systematic search. They moved through the damaged sections of the station with practiced efficiency. In one corridor, they found 3 Vrkul warriors hiding in a storage room. The aliens surrendered immediately when they saw the human soldiers. In another section, they discovered the body of a Vrkul that had been killed when the station's automated defenses activated. The Marines marked the location and moved on. By the end of 2 hours, they had swept the entire station. 5 Vrkul prisoners were secured in a cargo bay under guard. The rest of the raiders were either dead or had fled with their ships. Meanwhile, on the Indomitable's bridge, Yejin was making preparations. Daeho, I want you to record everything that happened here. Full battle footage, sensor logs, communications, everything. May I ask why, Captain? Daeho asked. Because I'm going to broadcast it, Yejin said. On every open channel. I want every species in this sector to see exactly what happens when someone attacks human civilians. Her first officer looked concerned. Captain, that might be seen as aggressive. It could create diplomatic problems. Good, Yejin said firmly. I want it to be aggressive. I want every pirate, every raider, every hostile force to know that humans protect their own. That we will cross any distance, overcome any obstacle, to defend our people. Let them see our strength. Let them fear it. She stood and walked to the main view screen. Outside Taejan Station hung in space, damaged but intact. For too long, our colonies have been vulnerable, scattered, easy targets. That ends today. Today we send a message that will echo across the galaxy. Humanity has arrived, and we will not be victims. Daeho compiled the footage and prepared it for broadcast. The recording showed everything. The Vrkul attack. The desperate distress signal. The Indomitable's impossible jump. The one-sided battle that followed. The capture of the war chief. Ready to broadcast, Captain, he reported. Send it, Yejin ordered. Maximum range. All frequencies. The message went out across space. It reached trading stations and military outposts. It was picked up by passing ships and relay satellites. Within hours, it had spread across dozens of star systems. Alien governments watched the footage with growing concern. Some saw opportunity. Others saw threat. But all of them saw the same thing. Humanity was far more dangerous than they had believed. In the Vrkul Empire's capital, the ruling council gathered in emergency session. They watched War Chief Garrix's defeat over and over. They saw their ships destroyed in seconds. They saw their warriors overwhelmed by human marines. This is a disaster, one council member said. Garrix was one of our best war chiefs. 20 ships lost. The humans made it look easy. We must respond, another argued. If we appear weak, others will think they can attack us. The eldest council member shook his head. No, we respond with wisdom, not pride. The humans have shown us their strength. They have also shown us their values. They traveled across impossible distances to save 300 civilians. What do you think they would do if we attacked Earth itself? How many ships would they send? How many warriors? The room fell silent. The council member continued. We will send a formal apology to the human government. We will claim that Garrix acted without authorization. We will offer compensation to the survivors of Taejan Station. And we will never ever attack another human colony. Is this clear? The others nodded slowly. Pride was worthless if you were dead. The humans had proven themselves too dangerous to provoke. Back on Taejan Station, Minho stood in the damaged control room and looked out at the Indomitable. The massive warship hung in space like a guardian angel. He had sent a desperate message into the void, never really believing anyone would come, but they had come. They had risked everything, pushed their ship beyond its limits, and arrived just in time. They had fought for people they had never met. They had proven that humanity meant what it said. No one is left behind. Captain Yejin's face appeared on his communication screen. Commander Minho, we'll remain in orbit until you're ready to evacuate. My engineers can help with repairs if you plan to stay. Minho looked around at his battered station. Then he thought about his people, alive and safe thanks to these soldiers. Captain, with your permission, we'd like to stay. This is our home. We're not going to let raiders drive us away, but we would appreciate help with the repairs, Hijin smiled. That's the spirit, Commander. We'll send our engineering teams over immediately. And Minho? We're also arranging for a permanent patrol in this sector. You won't be alone out here anymore. Minho felt emotion rising in his throat. Thank you, Captain. Thank you for everything. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Tajin Station. The Indomitable remained in orbit, its engineering teams working alongside the station's crew to repair the damage. Slowly but surely, the mining colony was being rebuilt. Commander Minho stood in the newly repaired control room and watched the work crews outside. They were replacing hull plating, sealing the breaches, restoring the station to full functionality. It would take time, but they would succeed. Humans were good at rebuilding. A young woman approached him. It was Soman, the engineer from the Indomitable. Commander, we've finished repairing your main power grid. You should have full capacity by tomorrow morning. Thank you, Soman, Minho said warmly. I don't know how we can ever repay you and your crew, she smiled. You don't have to repay us. This is what we do. You're human. You're family. We look after our family. The word struck Minho deeply. Family. That was exactly what it felt like. When he had sent that desperate distress signal, he had been calling out to strangers. But the people who answered had not treated him like a stranger. They had risked their lives, pushed their ship to its limits, and fought a superior force to save people they had never met. Captain Hyejin entered the control room. She had visited the station several times over the past weeks, checking on the repairs and meeting with Minho's people. The survivors loved her. To them, she was the hero who had saved their lives. Commander, she said with a nod, I wanted to speak with you before we leave. You're leaving? Minho asked, feeling a sudden emptiness. We have orders to continue our patrol, Hyejin explained. But don't worry. The UESS Guardian and the UESS Sentinel will arrive in 2 days. They'll establish a permanent patrol route through this sector. You'll never be alone out here again. Minho felt relief wash over him. A permanent patrol. That means a lot, Captain. Hyejin placed a hand on his shoulder. Minho, I need you to understand something. What happened here was not special treatment. This is standard policy for every human colony. Every human ship, every human citizen. When you call, we answer. Always. No matter how far you are, no matter how dangerous the situation. We learned long ago that we're stronger together than apart. Why? Minho asked. Why risk so much for 300 miners on a remote station? Hyejin looked out at the stars. Because every one of those 300 people matters. Because humanity spent too many centuries divided, fighting each other, leaving people behind. We swore we would never make that mistake again. Out here in space, we're all we have. If we don't protect each other, who will? She turned back to him. You and your people are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are part of humanity, and humanity takes care of its own. Minho nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The news of what happened at Tajin Station had spread across human space like wildfire. On Earth, in the colonies, on ships and stations everywhere, people heard the story. They heard how the Indomitable had pushed beyond its limits. How Captain Hyejin had refused to abandon 300 civilians. How human Marines had defeated superior numbers through skill and determination. The reaction was powerful. Colonists who had felt vulnerable and alone now felt protected. They knew that if danger came, help would arrive. They could sleep peacefully knowing that Earth had not forgotten them. On a distant colony world, a young girl asked her mother, if bad people came here, would the big ships come to help us too? Her mother hugged her close. Yes, sweetheart. They would come. They would always come. Meanwhile, in alien space, governments were having urgent discussions. The Galactic Trade Council called an emergency meeting to discuss the human situation. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to watch the battle footage again. We severely underestimated the humans, one ambassador said. We thought they were primarily merchants and explorers. We were wrong. They have advanced technology, another added. That ship moved faster than our sensors could track. Their weapons are devastatingly powerful. But what concerns me most, a third ambassador said, is their determination. They crossed impossible distances for 300 civilians. What would they do if we threatened their homeworld? How many ships would they send? How far would they go? The council chairman spoke. I propose we extend formal diplomatic relations to Earth. We should offer trade agreements, mutual defense treaties, and cultural exchanges. The humans are clearly a rising power. Better to have them as friends than enemies. The motion passed unanimously. Within days, Earth received its first official diplomatic contacts from major alien governments. Treaties were proposed. Trade routes were opened. Humanity was no longer seen as insignificant newcomers. They were now recognized as a serious military and economic power. The Vrakul Empire sent their formal apology along with substantial compensation for Tajin Station. They claimed War Chief Garrix had acted without authorization. They promised it would never happen again. Everyone knew it was face-saving nonsense, but Earth accepted the apology and the money. The message had been sent. The message had been received. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Heejin prepared for departure. Her crew was proud of what they had accomplished. They had saved 300 lives. They had defeated a superior force. They had announced humanity's presence in this part of space. But Heejin knew the real victory was something else. It was the knowledge that humanity stood together, that no human, no matter how far from Earth, no matter how small their settlement, was truly alone. When they called for help, someone would answer. Sergeant Taehyun came to the bridge to report. Captain, all Marines are back on board. Station security has been briefed. They're ready to handle any future incidents. Excellent work, Sergeant, Heejin said. You and your Marines performed brilliantly. Just doing our job, Captain. Protecting humans is what we signed up for. Heejin smiled. That's exactly the right attitude, Sergeant. She turned to her crew. All stations prepare for departure. Set course for our next patrol sector. And everyone, I want you to know how proud I am of what we accomplished here. We showed the galaxy who humans really are. We showed them our strength, our technology, and most importantly, our values. Well done. The crew responded with enthusiasm. They had every reason to be proud. As the Indomitable prepared to jump away, Minho watched from the station's observation deck. He saw the massive warship turn gracefully in space, its hull gleaming in the light of the distant sun. Then, in a flash of light, it was gone. But Minho did not feel alone. He knew that somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling. Human Marines were training. Human engineers were building new vessels. And if danger came again, those ships would come running. That was the promise humanity had made to itself. No one is forgotten. No one is abandoned. 2 days later, just as Heejin had promised, the Guardian and the Sentinel arrived. They were smaller than the Indomitable, but still powerful and well-armed. They established a patrol pattern that would bring them past Tajin Station every 3 days. Commander Minho met with their captains and thanked them for coming. They responded the same way Heejin had. This was not special treatment, this was standard procedure. Every human colony deserved protection. Over the following months, Tajin Station returned to full operation. The miners went back to work. The scientists resumed their research. Children played in the habitat's recreational areas. Life continued. But everyone who had lived through the attack remembered. They remembered the fear. They remembered thinking they were going to die. And they remembered the moment when help arrived, when the Indomitable appeared like an avenging angel to save them. They told their children the story. They shared it with new arrivals. The tale of how Earth's mightiest had come when no one thought they could. How humans had crossed impossible distances to save their own. How a captain named Heejin had refused to leave anyone behind. Across human space, the same story was being told. It became a symbol of humanity's values, a reminder of what made them different from other species. They did not abandon their people. They did not calculate odds and decide some lives were not worth saving. They came. They always came. And in the darkness between the stars, human ships continued their patrols. They watched over colonies and mining stations. They escorted merchant vessels. They stood ready to answer any call for help, because that was what humans did. When one of them called out in fear, when one of them needed help, when one of them faced impossible odds, the rest came running. Not because it was profitable, not because it was easy, but because they were human, and humans took care of their own. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. Earth's mightiest had heard their call and they had answered. They would always answer. That was the promise. That was the oath. And humanity would keep it no matter what the cost.